The amazing series of Spider-Man movies are a case study in how not to build a cinematic universe. Despite the talent and effort associated with the projects. Stop. Dude, Rumspinner. You know that's not Andrew Garfield, right? It isn't? Bro! Despite the talent and effort from the cast and production, this series was doomed by studio interference. Which, ironically enough, is a repeat of what happened to Spider-Man 3. In fact, one could argue that this is the inevitable arc of creative projects. They start with unlimited potential and optimistic effort, reaching for the stars themselves. Then as they approach or achieve greatness, greedy non-creatives drag them back down with interference and audience testing and picking safety over creativity. But I digress. That is a topic for another video perhaps. For this one, we're going to dive from bird's eye to ground level and fix this movie. But we're going to do it under similar constraints as the original. What does that mean? Same budget, same cast, and most importantly, we must begin to establish a cinematic universe. Because that's what this movie, and a lot of superhero movies, are doing now. It can't just be a personal story, they gotta throw in tie-ins and backdoor pilots. Let's see if we can do both. Now, we're nixing the whole James Bond plane sequence from the original, which will save us a boatload of money. Instead, we'll start this adventure with a crime-fighting montage. I think it'd be cool to have a radio broadcast explain that as a result of the lizard cure explosion thingy at the end of the last movie, some randos in the blast area have experienced spontaneous genetic mutations. That's a quick and easy way to tie the advent of some of these new villains to the beginning of Spidey's career. Anyway, during our montage, we see Spidey fighting some of said villains along with regular criminals. We're keeping the budget in mind here, so let's say he fights the Rhino, who I think should be part robot, part human. Boomerang. No, not that one. This one. And we can even get hints toward Black Cat. Peter and Gwen also go on a series of dates, but Peter is constantly pulled away from civilian life to save the day. The montage ends with the couple graduating high school. Gwen mentions her intent to study at NYU while hoping to climb the ranks at Oscorp, whereas Peter is less certain about his future. We learn that Pete's been taking pictures and doing odd jobs to support Aunt May, who has also taken on more work since Uncle Ben got Uncle Ben. We also learn that the Parkers are late on their mortgage payments and are on their last financial legs. But things change when Gwen receives a visit from an old friend, Harry Osborn. Yeah, in this version, Harry is closer to Gwen than he is to Peter. Let me cook. This Harry grew up alongside Gwen. Captain Stacy and Norman Osborn had a somewhat close relationship that was more business than friendship, but nevertheless, their families subsequently developed a bond. As such, Harry and Gwen spent a lot of time together on one end due to their dads, with Harry and Peter spending limited time together due to theirs. So Harry connects to our two heroes via two separate threads. Those threads were severed though when Harry was shipped off to boarding school at a young age. But he's back, and he means to make up for lost time. And he does. We see Peter and Gwen turn into Peter, Gwen, and Harry as the three kick it. They spend most of their time at Peter's house, bonding over science and their shared pasts. Gwen talks about how she used to protect Harry from bullies. Peter talks about how Harry used to copy his homework to get by. When Gwen mentions her hope to climb the ladder at Oscorp, Harry invites her to preview a new project from their science division in the field of rapid cellular regeneration, spurred on by the lizard incident. So our trio go to Oscorp. During preparations for the preview, Gwen tells Peter that Harry used to have a crush on her, with Peter remarking that it's likely less used to and more does. Harry takes Peter aside, telling him that he knows about his financial troubles, and offers not just to take care of them, but to also fund Peter's college. Simultaneously, a band of thieves infiltrate the company. Said group includes Max Dillon, our villain. This version of Max is a petty thief. He's not nearly as mindful or demure, but he is still clearly the runt of the litter, despite his bitterness at his role. He and the others participate in the heist, meaning to steal research from Oscorp. But when Max bumps into and is quipped at by Peter, he lashes out, causing the thieves to be found out. And a stealth mission suddenly turns into a shootout and mad dash to escape. Peter Parker swaps out for Spider-Man, who dispatches the thieves while taking a minor wound. During the shootout, Harry protects Gwen, getting grazed by a bullet in the process. Max tumbles into electrical wiring that supercharges his body, seemingly frying him. No eels for this one though. Or tooth gap fixes, even if they're funny. In the aftermath of the shootout, Harry reveals his illness to Pete and Gwen. He's got goblinitis.
Yuck.
If it isn't stopped, he'll be stuck in goblin mode forever. His hope is that the cell regen project they were shown will prove successful, curing him and his daddy, but mentions that its premiere is still far in the future. He also laments that the spiders from the last movie were destroyed, as their venom supposedly was an alternate road to healing. Peter then notices that while Harry is still injured, he's already healed. And he has an idea. He'll transfer blood to Harry, fixing his goblinitis. Gwen advises against the transfusion, preaching caution, but Peter is dead set on doing it. Maybe because of altruism, maybe a little bit because of that moolah Harry promised. Who can say? Peter goes to Aunt May for advice while hiding the nature of his questioning, but the conversation turns instead to Aunt May's worries. She fears she can't sustain them both and wishes she could be more like Ben or even Peter's own parents, mentioning how she feels powerless. But Peter reassures her that strength isn't everything and deems her as more than enough, then makes his decision then and there. Meanwhile, Max awakens in a morgue. Just like in the movie, he wields his electrical powers for the first time, but unlike in the movie, using his powers is a drain, causing him to temporarily lose form. Max instinctively siphons electricity to recharge, then gets an idea of his own. He's returning to what he calls home. Back to our heroes. Peter exposes himself to Harry. Not like that, you sicko. He tells Harry he's Spider-Man, swears him to secrecy, then with Gwen's help goes through with the blood transfusion. And it works. Harry is cured. But he's not just cured, he's superior. The transfusion has granted him abilities similar to Peter, because in this version, Peter isn't the only one capable of gaining said abilities. We're scrapping that little plotline for reasons we'll get into later. The happy moment is cut short though when the news mentions an ongoing battle at a dockside warehouse. Max is attacking his gang's hideout. Peter suits up then, heading over, while unbeknownst to him, and despite Gwen's interference, Harry dons one of Peter's spare masks and follows. Peter arrives at the warehouse in the midst of Max's siege, confronting him.
Another sparkly guy, huh? Well, I hope you're not gonna call yourself the Shocker, cause...
The two face off. Harry shows up mid-battle, first trying to help Peter, then being redirected to fight goons while Peter duels Max. Harry is far more ruthless than Peter, using his super strength to brutalize his opponents in a way that causes Peter to split his attention between fighting Max and keeping mobsters alive. During the kerfluffle, Max nearly kills the leader of his gang, who, let's say, will be Tombstone, but before he has any powers. Harry allows Max to electrocute Tombstone, but Peter intervenes to save the mobster's life. Then Max, nearly spent and dissipating, retreats. Tombstone is sent to the hospital, while Peter and Harry leave the scene. Cue a little montage of superheroing. Pete takes Harry under his wing to train him. Harry is a little slow to pull his punches and a little fast to jump into action recklessly. But Peter cuts him slack despite Gwen's trepidation. Peter eases off superheroing as he spends more time with Gwen and Aunt May, while simultaneously developing a signal tracer to track down Max. Harry leans more and more into the heroic lifestyle, tailoring a suit that's distinct from Peter's while still paying homage. Meanwhile, with Tombstone hospitalized, Max assumes control of his old gang, installing himself as its new boss. He hatches a plan with his men to bolster and solidify his fluctuating power, vowing never to be weak again.
Max is dead.
He tells himself and his new lackeys.
Now. Forever.
Back to our heroes at the Parker house. Gwen finishes development on a device to stabilize and suppress Max. She also explains to Peter why she helps him fight villains even without powers of her own, and gives him that sweet, sweet responsibility speech we all know and love.
Remember, with great power
comes great responsibility.
Peter in turn gives Harry a pep talk to encourage him before they face Max again. Harry in turn says,
I always knew I deserved this. Now I'm gonna show you, everyone, why.
Peter's tracer tracks down Max, who is siphoning energy from a major power plant. Our trio race toward the movie's climax to stop him. Pete confronts Max, trying to convince him to stop by explaining that draining the city's power will kill thousands. But Max is determined to become a god. Harry attacks, and the battle begins. Gwen heads to the control tower to kill the power and prevent Max's ascension, with the goal being to then use the power dampener on him. Harry and Peter fight Max and his goons. During the battle, Harry orders Peter to defend Gwen, leaving him to face Max by himself, which proves to be a mistake. Alone, Harry is no match for Max, and gets beaten to the point of almost dying, so Peter jumps back into the fray to save his friend. But as he manages to get Gwen's power dampener on Max and save the day, Electro expends one last lightning nova that destabilizes the plant's control tower. With Harry too injured, Peter's the only one who can swing back to the crumbling building. He weaves through obstacles, trying to reach Gwen in time, but he's just too late. Despite his attempts, she dies, and Peter holds her in his arms, cradling her body in misery as the screen fades. Our epilogue starts at a funeral. Peter comforts what's left of Gwen's family, but he's clearly devastated. When he notices Harry watching from a distance, he starts to approach, but Harry flees. So Peter takes comfort instead in Aunt May. In our final scene, Harry returns to Oscorp, entering the depths of the Cellular Regeneration Project. He ignores a call from his father, along with a dozen missed calls from Peter. Then he steps into the lab, touching the glass of an opaque container. And from the other side, a gooey black substance touches back. So, that's my pitch for Human Spider 2 Electric Boogaloo. Now, needless to say, this script isn't as granular as a true one, so I had to illustrate my points in broad strokes. But even so, I think this rendition functions both as its own story and as a doorway to the cinematic universe Sony intended to produce. In the original, the consensus seemed to just be Oscorp makes everything, which was not done well. My idea is more along the lines of ripples in a pond. Spider-Man creates the lizard, cures the lizard but accidentally creates other villains, some of which are related to him, some not, etc, etc. Speaking of, this version of Max is clearly different than the OG. This iteration plays more to Jamie Foxx's strengths than what we got, which is clearly not my sole idea, cause in No Way Home, instead of being a nerd, he's just Jamie Foxx. I say let him. Electro isn't the true focus of either movie, so he doesn't need to be super duper deep. Sorry to all 4 of the Electro fans out there. Sorry.
My Prada's at the cleaners, along with my hoodie and my you flip-flops, you pretentious.
However, I do think Electro needs to tie into the central theme of the film, which in this version is about relationships to power. Aunt May feels weak because of her finances, Max feels undercut by his mob boss and gang, Harry feels robbed of a strength he thinks he deserves, Gwen feels responsible for the betterment of the world. Whereas Peter, unlike the rest, wants to be free from his power so he can spend more time with the ones he loves. An exploration of that concept could be interesting, even going into further movies as Peter explores his own responsibility and its price. And on Peter, the Parker we got was wishy-washy, special in a way that dampened the everyman message of Spider-Man, and recovered from Gwen's death a little too quickly. This version is more certain in his desires and shows flaws without reaching too far into the territory of immaturity. Which, side note, it's okay for Peter to be immature. He's a teenager after all, despite looking like he escaped college a few years ago. I just think that immaturity can be channeled in a more palatable way. Said channeling, along with the introduction of all the villains tossed into this stew, would have hopefully resulted in a movie worthy of a sequel, and project worthy of a universe. I don't know, maybe. Maybe the studio would have interfered anyway. But I think this would have had a better chance. A spectacular chance. An amazing... Bro! That's all for this one. Like and subscribe, because I've got more rewrites, fixes, and essays in the works. And speaking of, for my next rewrite, till then, cheers.